Hey, y'all. I'm Rob,
And I'm Erica.
and you're listening to Pumpkin Spice.
And Nothing Nice podcast.
This is episode 7, the one with the hypnotists.
Trigger warning. Topics discussed in this episode may not be suitable for all listeners.
Okay, I want to start off our episode today by thanking Becca, because now I also have a mug. Thank you,
I almost used mine for this episode, but I didn't know if you had one yet because I knew it was coming. I just didn't know if it had arrived yet, and so I'm just using mine.
It's so cute. I love
it because I wasn't gonna have us only have mine. Whatever. It doesn't matter. But yay! Thanks, Becca at Zoo House LLC.
Thank you. And also, side note of business. If we do nothing else with our podcast, I need McAllister's to get on board with bringing back the muffaletta. If we achieve nothing else, I need McAllister to bring back the muffaletta.
So I think we need to spend at least a few moments in every single episode saying that McAllister's bring back the muffaletta.
Okay. Have you ever? Oh, you've never had a muffaletta? Okay. He's a loser. Don't worry about him. He's just.
It is. It's crunchy on the outside. The meat is very, very greasy, but yet lean. There's olives, so there's a bunch of salt, and it's just cheesy. It's my favorite.
But nobody else does it right. Outside of New Orleans, in Alabama, I need McAllister's to bring back their recipes.
That one place you took me to when I was visiting. I don't remember the name of the restaurant.
That's okay.
It was good. The bread was just way too crunchy.
It just isn't the same.
Okay.
Now on to business. And we're going to leave that in the recording. Leave that in the recording. We're going to add ads for McAllister's Muffaletta. We're going to find old ads. And we're going to post them on TikTok and such. Okay. Hello. Welcome to Pumpkin Spice and Nothing Nice. My name is Erica. This is my father, Jeff, and our co-host is the lovely Rob.
Hello.
And today we're going to discuss hypnosis.
Hypnosis. And off camera, Jeff had asked if it was hot as hell in Ohio, and I'm happy to report it is only 75.
Wow.
In the Dayton area of Ohio today. Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is in the.
It's got to be in the 90s again.
The Birmingham of Alabama.
500% humidity.
Probably. It felt nice yesterday-ish.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad.
It rained a fair bit yesterday. So it was much cooler yesterday. I think it was like 70 as a high. I don't know. I came home and crashed from work. So
he's very sleepy. He works very hard. Okay, so in case our listeners didn't know, professionally, I have children and a husband, and that's what I do for a lot of my hours. But also, I am a hypnotist, and I have an office down the hall in a building from my father, who is also a hypnotist. So today we are going to talk about hypnosis in the sense of someone who doesn't know anything about hypnosis, and we're going to answer some questions and help to try to alleviate some, what's the word?
Misunderstandings.
Miscommunications, misunderstandings, myths, such about hypnosis and hypnotists. And starting out, I will say this much: make sure that if you are seeing a hypnotist, or if you're, considering hypnosis, that you find reputable sources and check reviews and such online, because there can be people that are not good hypnotists, just like any other career. But you want to make sure that you find somebody that is not going to take advantage of you or whatever. Okay, go ahead.
okay, thanks. I had to cough, and I didn't want it to come through the mic. So yeah, I think hypnosis in a lot of ways kind of parallels the things that I do outside of cooking and social media. and that's tarot and other forms of divination. And I think there's a gigantic misconception about what hypnosis is, kind of like there are gigantic misconceptions about what divination and tarot is. And it is very easy to get scammed by both industries if you're not paying attention with whom you're working, and their credentials and their experience, and making sure that the people you go to for services like that are legit. Now, when it comes to tarot, the messing up of one's life is more or less mental health related and financial. Hypnosis can really do some feng shuiing of the brain, and if the person doesn't know what they're doing, it can lead to other things. So yeah, but I don't want to get into what I know about hypnosis so much, but I want to get into what you guys know about hypnosis. And we do have two questions. Well, I'm not sure if they're two questions, because I always wait until I do the recording to read their questions. That way I don't read into their questions. But we have questions from some of our viewers. Miss Lady Liz and Miss Mama B, Bonnie and Liz, did submit some questions. So let's start with Liz first. And she states, I believe y'all covered past life regression hypnosis. It'd be good because I see a lot of fools on TikTok having it as a trend. Also cover how self-hypnosis is nothing to be played with either, because people are thinking, oh, I can self-hypnotize and go into the astral or communicate with spirit deities, etc., when they don't know what the heck they are doing. Lol. So so Ms. Liz wants you guys to cover some past life regression hypnosis and talk about this idea of self-hypnotizing and maybe some
spirit communication
effects that can happen as far as what self-hypnotizing can be. And then sure, let's talk about some spirit connection. That could be fun.
Yeah. Okay. I want you to start with self-hypnosis. Oh my gosh. Self-hypnotization.
Okay, so let's start out with an understanding of which way we two lean, okay? Erica does past life regression work and also relationship work and some other things, okay? Or in that spiritual realm of things.
Mental exploration is what I like to call it, yeah.
On the other hand, I deal a lot with phobias, habits, stop smoking, weight loss, things like that, as well as trauma, PTSD issues and things along that line, dealing with stress, anxiety, a lot of the things that have, how do you say it, a neurological part as well as a physical part, how it affects your body and things like that. Some sort of more on that side. Eric just tends to be a little more spiritual. That said, I've done ghost busting for a number of years in my life, and I'm currently very well involved in doing work with UFO investigations. So I've got that side of me as well. But self-hypnosis, it is something that anyone can do. You can find lots of materials on how to go about doing that. That is something I have just recently decided to start teaching my clients. I can be very didactic in my sessions. I'll teach a lot of tools like tapping, shinjitsu, bilateral stimulation, peripheral vision, a lot of these little tools that help take people down a couple of notches stress-wise, okay?
Like a coping
mechanisms, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to start doing a little more self-hypnosis because I am in my process getting people into a very relaxed state. They're being very trancy. And that's something that I can suggest in my process, that they have the ability to do that whenever they like, just by being in a relaxed state, maybe doing a little bit of something to re-invoke that feeling, maybe an anchor situation where you've anchored a movement such as that with that feeling, and you do that, and you can bring up that feeling that they were in during my session. And that
I love what you're talking about with anchoring, because that's not something that I had heard of before, is being under hypnosis and then being implanted with an anchor, like a particular movement or a word could be an anchor, I presume, right? So in spellcraft and other forms of spiritualism, you can have what's called a trigger word. And I think that is really cool that hypnosis kind of bridges that gap there as well. That's what's up. Okay, sorry. Continue.
Yeah, as far as the word goes, that's something we commonly do in one of my trance inductions for, I think it was a PLR thing, but as part of that, you're initially have the client in a safe space. They're in the trance state. They're in a safe space, maybe some kind of reflection of a vacation or someplace in their house. They feel nice and comfy and safe. And
I usually refer to it as a happy place, but in trance, it's a campsite. I refer to it as a campsite.
Yeah. And what I'll tell people then is, okay, at this point in time, I want you to give me two words that don't necessarily go together, but two words that are very unique, like purple tuna or something like that, some kind of words that you're not going to normally hear in conversation. And then I'll say, the next time we're in this situation, in this office, with you in that chair, and you're very relaxed like you are now, I can say the word purple tuna, and that will go into your unconscious mind and allow you to return to this state of relaxation. And you're sort of not starting from ground zero again. You're invoking that feeling again. Same thing with little motions with your hands, doing your fingers, pressing your wrist, anything that you don't normally do during the day that's sort of unique. If you were to do, I don't know, I got a vulgar thing I'd say, but do a particular movement somehow that you do every day, you don't want that to be your trigger, your anchor point.
I could argue that, but I won't.
So yeah, and that, like I was saying, the self-hypnosis thing is something that can bring, as like the stress relief tools. It's something you can do if you got a few moments to chill out. You could do that, go into a little quiet place for a while, remember that trance state that you were in, chill for a bit, have some kind of cue for you, maybe set an alarm on your watch, something in 10 minutes, buzz me back, meet me back, Scotty, to the world, and rejoin life and feeling a little bit better.
Now, can you elaborate into the difference between a meditation and self-hypnosis? Because I think that some people might find that they might think that they're the same thing.
That I wouldn't really argue that a lot. I just think it's more of a different level, maybe. I think that when you're in meditation, it's quite similar to hypnotic state, no doubt about that. I don't see how that you could really draw a distinct line. Do you see a distinct line in the two?
I feel like meditation to me would be just a way to relax and let go, where hypnosis might be a set desire.
Yeah, maybe. So we had talked about a little bit earlier about mindfulness. Mindfulness is one of those buzzwords you hear all the time now.
Right.
And it tends to be tied in with, when you think of mindfulness, you think of a fella with yoga pants on, sitting on a bamboo mat with his hair in a bun, and he's sitting like this, all zenned out, and all. And I said, no, that's not necessary. You don't need that. To me, mindfulness is sitting on grandma's porch in my rocking chair, chilled out, just enjoying the afternoon. Traffic going by, and I'm just tuned out, rocking in my rocking chair.
Absolutely. And see, I like to cook. I mean, I became a chef for a reason. And some of my, most meditative mindful moments are when I'm like cooking a recipe that I know is fixing to be fire. Like, I just know, and I can zone in and zone out. And, while I'm working, I can let the thoughts come in that are going to come in, and then they can leave as they're supposed to leave. And I don't have to focus on anything other than knowing that this is going to be the best chicken piccata anybody's ever had. Or, so meditation, and that's a valid point. And meditation doesn't have to look like some kind of lotus position. I tend to call it uncomfortable yoga positions because I don't do yoga. So I think they all look extremely uncomfortable to me. But it doesn't have to be a silent room where you have incense going and you have chimes playing in the background and you just have to sit in utter silence. You can dance and listen to music and still get into that mindful space. You can cook. You can work on cars if you're a mechanic. You can do menial tasks that mean something to you that helps you focus on what it is that you're trying to focus on. And I think that would differ from hypnosis, because with hypnosis, you kind of have to get into that part of your brain where it's no longer conscious thought. You have to get into the subconscious part, and doing menial tasks, like cooking or working on a car or sitting there rocking to music may make that process more difficult.
Yeah, and to Erica's point, I was thinking about that as you're talking, the idea that mindfulness or meditation may be more peaceful. You're not really thinking about activity so much to say, but the hypnosis would definitely be more purpose driven, more focused on doing something with that mindset, you know. So yeah, that's a good point.
Now to visit into what Liz was talking about with communication with spirits and whatnot. So in a way, you have to be a little bit not non-believing, but not certain of your beliefs.
You need to have a
when it
little
comes
skepticism.
Yeah. So when it comes to someone communicating with a deceased person or just, ancestors or spiritual things, there is a really, really cool development that has occurred through a practice called IEMT. And that's, it's not IEMT?
No, it's EMDR.
EMDR, okay. So IEMT is integral eye movement techniques. And then EMDR is
movement desensitization retraining, maybe. I don't know what the R is.
So IEMT is what hypnosis can do. EMDR is through clinical, like licensed medical practitioners.
Yeah,
there is a difference.
The way it formed was that they limited it to doctoral level practitioners, psychiatrists, and doctoral level psychologists. That's the way the rules read now. Can we talk about that a bit?
Yes.
Okay, so there was a psychiatrist, and forgive me if I'm wrong, I think his name is Alan Botkin, maybe, and he wrote a book called, the abbreviation, the acronym is IADC, and I never can remember what the first letter is. I for induced after death communications, IADC. It's something that he discovered working with clients using EMDR, especially in grief type situations where he would be working with somebody and they were grieving over a loss.
Whether it was new or old.
New or old. In some of the cases he talks about is some things that happened in Vietnam, for example, in those stressful sort of things. And he'd have that person working through those situations in EMDR, which is eye movements. You're moving your hands in certain directions.
Your head stays still.
The client is moving the eyes in certain patterns. And he developed this sort of a protocol where he'd have that person in connection with that feeling, that emotion, that time that was reflected in what he was dealing with, how he was dealing with the grief. And then as it ended, he would end that EMDR session in a certain way. And he would have that person, the client, pause in a certain way. And he'd let them sit there for a while. And then almost very regularly, they'd open their eyes and they go, oh my gosh, I just talked to him. I talked to that guy, that person, he or her, whatever, that I was trying to work through that grief with. I spoke with him and he spoke back. So that's a thing.
In some situations, wasn't it that they could feel the person touch them or hug them? Yeah. So with past life regression, I cannot guarantee that there is such a thing as past lives. I cannot guarantee that what the client would experience is a past life of theirs. So what I like to say is it's more along the lines of a mental exploration. Now, I personally, in my sessions, can guarantee that what you will experience is your eyes seeing landscape you've never seen before in a body that's never been yours before. But I cannot guarantee that that is something you've actually lived through. I can't guarantee that there is such a thing. And because of that, that is the part of the skeptical application, is that I cannot, because I don't know this to be factual, I don't want someone to believe with everything they have that it is factual. But will I research the information given? Oh, yes. The thing about past life regressions, though, there are certain people that will be able to or they will claim that they are able to tell you exactly how many past lives you've had, exactly what jobs you've held before. And if that is a real thing to be told, I don't know how to do it. I have never done it. What I can do is I can put you into a trance state, and I will guide you to the point where your brain will decide where and when in time it wants to go. And from that point on, the client would lead the way. Most recently, and not to make this sound like it's a planned conversation or whatnot, but most recently I had a client that was in the Vietnam War. That was what they were describing to me, was the Vietnam War. They were able to give me names and details of certain things that I have since researched and was able to connect to, possibly connect to real life people that existed and were involved in the same thing. And so a previous situation, I put my husband under trance, and he was a guy that worked on, fishing boats or something, and had married this woman. And I was able to go and research that information, and I was able to find the man and his wife in the time frame that was given. So can I guarantee that what comes out in a session is truth? No, I cannot guarantee that. I cannot guarantee that spiritually your soul has been in another place before, but that is the ideology that it works off of. If you believe in this certain thing, then cool. If you don't believe in it, that's cool too, because I'm not going to tell you where to go. I'm going to put you into the universe and tell you to go back to Earth. And once you get there, you tell me what is happening around you. And so can you do that so much? I don't know. I have tried to do an experiment, and I say tried loosely. There's a belief system about Akashic records where simply, and probably not as blatant as this, but if you're a human, you have access to all human information simply because you're a human. And I put my husband under trance, and I gave him some guidelines to find and follow, trying to, in essence, figure out a cold case. Now, when I looked at the information that was obtained in that session, does it correlate to the person that I was trying to get him to find? No, not really. However, I was able to find somebody that did match those descriptions, that information that was related to this person having killed the other person I was looking for. So there's a lot of loose cables that connect from one to the other points. Now, it's not a defined finite information stream, but in what I have done, I have seen people give me information that I am able to build these situations from. So I don't really know if it's, as factual as some people might want it to be, but it sure as hell is interesting to go through that experience with them and to see what they say. But as far as communication with mental exploration, there is a thing called, what is it called? The White Room. Talk about the White Room a little bit.
Well, there are a number of things that I'll use in just a normal hypnosis session. The White Room, as I've used it recently, is more dealing with ego parts, where you go into the White Room and you sit down at a table. The visualization is you're sitting at a table. You're in one chair. There's a chair sitting across from you. And during the process, there's a description of the room. There is a door behind that person. And as you go through the process, I will say, I'm going to count to 3 with a lot more verbiage to that. And in a moment, that door is going to open, and someone is going to walk out and sit down at its chair across from you. And at that point, it's just encouraging that individual to be open to whoever, whatever that thing is in that chair, and ask it questions and be very perceptive that everything that comes is exchanged back and forth is very relevant to the situation they're in. and they'll work through that process. And at the end of it, they will, thank that part of them and give them appreciation for coming to speak to them. And then you'll basically say, okay, now we're going to, take the essence of that, whatever it is, and you and merge that together, and it'll be beneficial to your life, and also all those things that it was trying to do before you are going to, those positive qualities will be utilized now in different ways to help that individual grow. Okay. Is that a very wordy explanation of that? But there are other things too where you're in a situation where you're just invoking that openness, that receptiveness to
receiving
information.
Yeah.
Right. And that, excuse me, that situation you were just talking about, someone sitting across the table from you, being open to a conversation with them, that is a really popular shadow work technique. There's a meditation in shadow work where you're basically having a conversation with your shadow self, but that embodies all the characteristics of the maladaptive behaviors you're trying to learn from and heal from. And I think that's kind of cool that you can use,
It's the same
psychology
stuff,
friends.
like
Thank you, Carl Jung. Thank you, Carl Jung.
Yeah.
I'm researching really heavily into shadow work because I'm quasi working on a book. Have been for 2 years, and I'm nowhere near ready for it to be anything. But that's
it's a matter of how you're interpreting, how you're setting that up.
Right.
In my world, is more you're talking about, and what we generally would lead into that discussion is that if you're talking about a habit or some behavior, you have built up this behavior within you that results in this thing, and the verbiage is, or the phrase is, it's almost as if there is a part of you that controls that behavior.
Right.
And you're doing this right room work then to communicate with that part and resolve. Because generally speaking, ego parts are there for your good. They're doing something that it thinks is helping you as an individual. They never intentionally harm you, because that way you can cause that person bad things to happen. But what it's encouraging you to do could maybe not be the best solution, like smoking. At one time you smoked to be social, to be relaxed, to be part of a group of friends. And now, 30 years later, when you're coughing your lungs out, not so good anymore. So you need to tell that part, let's use that somewhere else, that power.
Right.
Somewhere else.
Let's put that behavior somewhere else and the energy for it somewhere else. That's awesome. I went to pet the cat because he's begging for attention and the camera followed me. Sorry about that. But I've got more questions from our viewers.
Let me add one more. I'm talking way a lot. I'm sorry, but I had this is still in my head. Self-hypnosis, doing things like that where you're trying to make contact. I have to throw in there, be careful. Be careful. And I'll tell you something right away. We were doing, and when I did ghost work, we'd have a psychic involved in that. We'd have probably 3 or 4 people on the team. We would go in and do our work, and then typically at the end of that, we would do tabling. Look it up. It's old-fashioned communications using
we did have that conversation.
Table tilting.
Yeah.
Okay.
We talked about that on
It's
a
very
previous
cool.
episode.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then we had a couple that was working with us, doing some investigative work, ghost haunted houses, things like that. And they started doing that tabling on their own, without the group, without the psychic, who was very aware of white light and protecting the people around the table and all that. And they weren't doing that sort of thing. So I heard, never saw it, but I heard that they would have that table rocking and rolling, spinning on one leg and doing all kinds of crazy stuff, to the point it got very obsessive with them. They were doing it a lot. Same thing with trying to communication. I had this very discussion just literally 3 days ago with the old, here in the South, we call it the Ouija board, it's Ouija, whatever, but we call it the Ouija board here. Is it safe to use a Ouija board? Well, it's in effect, it's an inert little piece of cardboard, basically, with a little thing that's probably pressed cardboard as well. But when you direct that mental energy to that thing, if you're open to whatever's out there, you can make things happen. And if you don't recognize that potential for getting yourself very involved in things that are beyond this world, perhaps. Don't know. You just need to be very careful.
It's sort of like just randomly dialing people on a cell phone.
Yeah.
In the sense of, simplicity, it's like calling random numbers and seeing who answers.
Yeah, you might
But
screw up.
the problem I have with inexperienced people using things like spirit boards. See, I don't call it a Ouija board because that's like a name brand, Milton Bradley.
Tossing board. It's a spirit board.
I call it a spirit board. Now, the problem I have with people that utilize spirit boards that don't know how to use spirit boards is you don't know with whom you're speaking.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That energy, that entity can tell you whatever it wants to tell you at that point, and you never know what you're getting with situations like that. And I think that people that aren't sensitive to energies and sensitive to spirit and things like that, those people should be involved. People that are sensitive to these types of energies and can communicate with spirit should be involved in things like that, because you just never know. You never know. And then some people call it opening a door. And if you don't close that door, there's just a lot that can go wrong with spirit boards and self-hypnosis as well. If you don't close the right doors in the right order, if you don't bring yourself out in a certain way, it can become like the Mirror of Erised in Harry Potter, and you're just looking at a fantasy world at that point from then on. Six of Swords energy, Six of Cups energy, like stop, you stay grounded in reality and utilize those as the tools they're meant to be. Absolutely. That is what's up. Okay, it looks like a rapid fire interview that Miss Bonnie has set up for us. So
Let's do it.
First question, we've already kind of covered what hypnosis is. Her first question is hypnosis. What is it? We've discussed that. Is it mind control? That's a really good question. It is
Absolutely
not mind.
Not.
Well, it's your own mind control. It's not us controlling your mind.
Exactly. The hypnosis as we do it is a collaborative thing. It's something that we're doing with the individual that we're working with. We have to do our guiding part of it. We do suggestion, we do imagery, we do metaphor, we use imagination, but you have to be willing to let go, experience what we're suggesting. If I talk about, picture an elephant in your mind now, you have to just picture an elephant. It's easy. And you start letting yourself go. Picture yourself being in that perfect vacation space that you feel very comfortable in. Go with the flow, because we're building on a sense of security, a sense of relaxation. Then when I suggest to you that you're going to talk to this part in the room and you're open to having that part come in and talk to you and have an interchange, you'll be more likely to do that. I did this one time recently with a person, and after the session, I said, well, how did that go? Did you have a good conversation with that person across the chair from you? And she looked at me and she just shook her head. She said, I cussed him out. That's good. She got that out of her system. She could say whatever she wanted to, and she did, and that helps the healing. But it's going with the flow, letting go, being a part of the thing. That's collaborative. It's not something that we're controlling someone's mind doing.
I think that a lot of the misconception and misguided information comes from stage hypnosis. And with stage hypnosis, it's like the cluck like a chicken or all that stuff. So in those scenarios, you have a hypnotist on stage, and this hypnotist on stage is going to look at the crowd and see who is most apt to functioning in this
some
scenario.
sort of simple test.
Right. And so the people that are responding a certain way are going to get called on stage because they're going to put on the best show. Right. And then there's going to be tests to release who's not doing the best, who's not going to function properly. There's a lot to it in our side of that experience than it is from the crowd. So what a crowd might see is just all these people getting caught up on stage, and they might just be random people, but really that hypnotist has already looked at everybody's face and is watching the responses that are being shown. Now, in that processing is also the willingness, it's a peer pressure kind of thing to perform. Right. So they're going to keep people on stage that are wanting the experience, that are wanting to put on this show, that are wanting the attention from it. And so in the sense of, okay, you're under just like that. I have never experienced anything like that. However, if your mind is already processing that you're wanting to be a part of this so much, you are visibly, making it obvious to somebody else that you are there and you're raring to go.
Right.
It might be as easy as that. But now when they say, okay, you're going to cluck like a chicken, blah, 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 any good hypnotist is going to make it so that you can be pulled back out, that you do not have lasting things. You're not going to go home and cluck like a chicken if somebody says the word pizza or just random things like that.
Right.
So in what is shown in cartoons or movies, as far as the in-depth hold that a hypnotist would have on you, it's kind of a lie.
Right.
You always have your safety net still available in your brain. So you cannot say, okay, well, if I say this word, you're going to go rob a bank. So there's a secret phone call, and it's like, okay, the red button. And all of a sudden you hang up the phone and you go rob a bank.
Right.
Exactly. That's not real. If that is real, that person has other issues that are going on.
And this topic kind of brings up a rather hot take on things like evangelism and these very popular, very wealthy, absolutely, you're healed. And that's very much participation driven as well. So
yes,
I love that you brought that up.
It is participation hypnosis. Absolutely. 100%. I think actually when we went to Las Vegas, that was mentioned in some class that we took, or the ideology of it. If my memory is correct, which it's probably not, but I think there was something mentioned about that, or I don't know. Anyway, point is, you are so raring to go and be in this good grace and to put on a good show and to prove people that
social compliance.
It is a social compliance. But yes, 100%, that is a form of hypnosis. Yes.
Next question. Can a hypnotist damage someone's mind?
Again, you have a safety net that is like, if you would not go rob a bank out in your normal consciousness, right? You're going to not do that under hypnosis either. But as far as damage goes, there are ways that someone can be harmed, in the sense of, when you put somebody under, you have to watch them full time. You are watching their features, their twitches, their moves, you're listening to their words, you're watching eye movement, you're watching everything. And if someone is having an adverse reaction, the hypnotist is put in a position where they have to choose whether that adverse reaction is going to harm them or not, and whether to pull them out of the trance or not. Now, when I think of a hypnotist harming someone, I think of the sense of someone experiencing an adverse reaction in their trance and a hypnotist not making the right call on whether to end the session, to pull them out of it, re-guide them, or what have you. How do you feel on that?
So yeah, if you're having an abreaction to something in a trance, the idea of doing harm is probably very, very strong. If you're having an emotional response to something within that trance state, it's an emotional response. If the person cries and gets upset and all that, it's just a uncorking of an emotional effect.
Right.
Is that person damaged? No, I really doubt it.
But in what you're saying, if what they're recalling is so intense that it's triggering that response, the hypnotist is obligated to choose whether that emotional response is so intense it's not healthy.
Yeah, and it's typically something you can break trance and have somebody just focus on their breathing, and in a matter of minutes you've calmed down.
It's so easy to pull them out.
It's easy to pull them out.
That if you don't.
Yeah, and as far as the idea of damaging someone because they've been in a relaxed state of mind, no, not likely. It's a matter of the degree they're suggesting. And if you've got someone you're working with, there is what would I call it? Not necessarily a pre-selection, but before we ever work with anybody, we've talked to them. We know where they're coming from. We know what their goals
goals
are, their objectives. We sort of know a history of where they've been. And if I've got somebody come to me with some definite issues that are outside my area of expertise to handle, I'm sorry, I won't do that. Someone that obviously needs some kind of medical intervention, they're probably possibly already on some kind of prescriptive medicines and things to help them. That's
another thing
that's
too.
not within my realm of work.
That's another thing too. I don't really experience it with what I deal with because I'm dealing with a different aspect than you do with your clients. They seem to be on more of a standard search for hypnosis. So one thing that he will make sure of is if the topic is going to be a little bit heavier for people to process with, he will make sure that there is a licensed therapist or a medical practitioner that is already in.
Well, no, I will find out if there is that going on with them. And in the cases where there is a psychiatrist or someone else involved, I will say, listen, I understand what your issue is. I know that you're seeing this other practitioner. I am more than happy to speak with them. If they think that hypnosis may be complementary to what they're trying to do, we'll talk and possibly do something. And I'm surprised a couple of times now when I've had a call from a psychiatrist and they say, hey, I talked to John Doe here and he said he talked to you and he's at a point now in his treatment where that could possibly be beneficial. Go for it. It depends. And then maybe this opposite may be true as well, where somebody would say no, it may not help him at this point. Okay, so something he has to be aware of and make sure you're maintaining your what you can handle within your arena. There's certain things I won't do. If somebody calls up and tells me that they're about
leeches.
Leeches don't bother me. They're within within one piss off of going to a bridge or something. Then I'm going to say, maybe you need to be talking to a psychiatrist, speak to your doctor.
Right. Valid. The next question from Ms. Mama B is, can everyone be hypnotized?
I think anyone can be hypnotized. I think you go through hypnotic stages, trance states, so to speak, all during your day. A colleague of mine talks about you get 2 free hypnosis sessions daily. Hypnagogic sleep, when you're going to sleep at night, that sort of trancey, dreamy as you're going to sleep thing. And more prominently, what you hear about is hypnopompic sleep in the morning when you're just waking up. And most people, a lot of people I know I have that sort of that funny stuff that goes on in the morning. I've woken up before in a dream and I've woken up and then something goes on. And I realize I'm not awake yet and I wake up again, that sort of thing. Or some of those very, very vivid, very colorful, imaginative things that happen in the morning. You wake up and you go, whoa, what was that all about? 2 free things a day, plus you go through.
Or hearing your alarm in your dream.
Yeah.
And you're like, God, why is this alarm not turning off? Turn off alarm, and then you finally can wake up and you go, oh.
Yeah, here's what I did. This was during the day, but I was on a Zoom session with a person doing a hypnotic induction, doing a hypnotic session. And I had my telephone plugged in with earphones on. Okay, and I was listening. And I dozed off. I was asleep. So during the session,
were you supposed to be?
No, I was tired of sleep.
Okay.
During the session, it was coming to an end. No, the weather alert went off. The weather alert in the room went off, so I'm starting to wake up. So, and I'm still hearing the guy talking in my headphones, my earphones, earplugs. And so in my sleep state, I pulled the earphones out of my ear. But I was shocked to find that the earphones had come apart. And the Bluetooth part of the earphones were still in my ears because I was still hearing the guy talk. And I was all confused. Well, the plug's out, and I still hear him. But what do I do? And that confusion made me wake up. So that sort of weird in between stage is very much present. Highway hypnosis we talk about all the time, where you're driving down the road and you realize, oh my God, where am I? Did I miss my turn? Because you're just tuned out.
My
My wife
therapist,
told me,
my therapist calls that dissociation.
my wife says I have such a here because I'm watching a TV show and I'm totally tuned out.
Oh
It's about
yeah, absolutely.
the third or fourth Jeff, and I go, what? That intense focus, loss of where you are, dissociation from what's going on around you. Oh yeah, and everybody experienced that. Hypnosis per se, working with a hypnotist like us, I think it's a matter you can, if you're not so good at first, I think you can be trained, because a lot of it is just being able to just let it go, just relax, just let your mind clear, go with what I'm saying. Don't be, something maybe you're wound a little bit too tight, to just let go and just enjoy being in that state. So I think it's a matter of, we do it naturally. We can be trained to be better subjects. So yeah.
And not every hypnotist is going to be able to, is not everybody's cup of tea.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
and also it depends on what you consider hypnosis to look like. So you've told me before about a client that you had that was struggling to be put under, and you finally said, okay, well, how would you expect this to go? And he had to get, what did you use as a pendulum?
I had a little ball or something on a chain. It was funny. I worked with him forever, just doing progressive relaxation, having him nice and relaxed, and blah blah blah, a lot of word talking. And he just wasn't having any of it. He just was not going. And I said, what can I do to help you relax and feel better? And well, don't you have one of those little swingy things?
Those eye movements. Yeah.
He wanted to have that, and we did that. And he drifted right down. All right.
So I struggle being put into hypnosis. My father's been able to put me in hypnosis, but I have been in experiences where my brain is too active. When I was little, in the process of making me weird. Yes, of course I do. I am the way that I am. But I have physically struggled with being able to go into trance myself with other situations. But this man can bore me into trance like no other. So I agree. I think if you can fall asleep, you can be put into hypnotic trance.
I think, to kind of, I guess, put my perspective on, can anyone be hypnotized? For me, the problem I face isn't so much the ability to be put under. I have trust issues because I'm bipolar and I don't trust anyone. But I think that the people that are having problems being put under need to feel more comfortable with the person doing it. Because I feel like even if you're putting us in like our campsite or our safe space or whatever, there is still a level of vulnerability that comes into play with that. So to the people, and I'm talking to y'all people that can't be put under, you can't put me under, can't nobody put me under. Find somebody that you're comfortable with that can do it, and establish a connection with that person, and then see what happens. Because comfort level for me is more than just a comfortable chair or the room temperature or the ambiance, but it's also that connection I have with the person that I'm putting in charge of my subconscious. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that could be something else that people need to think about when they're looking into getting hypnosis for things like weight loss, or the quitting of maladaptive behaviors, or past life regression, or whatever their interest in pursuing hypnosis is. That hurdle of being connected to the person doing it can be helpful.
Right.
I find.
Yeah, the term is rapport. You need to have rapport with a hypnotist.
Mm-hmm. What is the difference between hypnosis and power of
Words are hard.
What is the difference between hypnosis and the power of suggestion?
We utilize the power of suggestion within hypnosis.
Okay.
I usually do, in any typical session, we do progressive relaxation. This is for me. I do progressive relaxation. You do as well. Progressive relaxation. some kind of visualization work where you're imagining being in a whatever nice situation, a safe space, a happy space.
I like to ask someone directly, tell me what your Zen place is. What brings you peace when you think about it? And I will design their campsite to be that after the progressive relaxation, that's their campsite, is their happy place that they have told me about beforehand.
Right.
And then once we go through those kinds of exercises, there will generally be some kind of metaphor where you'll talk about. I used this metaphor here recently that I really like. If you don't mind, I'll say it real fast. There are two frogs. Well, there's a frog, and he's fallen in a rut in the road, and he's at the bottom of the rut in the road, and he can't get out. Other frog comes up and sees the guy in the rut, and he says, "Hey, can you get out? You need some help?" And the frog says, "Yeah, could you please help me?" And he tries to reach down, tries to pick him up. Can't reach him, can't get him out. So the frog in the rut says, "Why don't you jump down and I can get on your back and I can climb out?" And the other frog, "Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. Then I'll be stuck." All right, well, good. Sorry I couldn't help you. And he hops on down the road. And then a few minutes later, the frog that was in the rut comes hopping by him very quickly, runs down past him. He said, "Hey, wait a minute. I thought you were stuck in the rut." He said, "Yeah, I was, but the truck's coming." So
that'll do it. That'll do it.
Using some metaphor like that makes a point. That's sort of a funny point, but metaphor like that. And then as we go along, then there'll be just some direct suggestion. I think what she's mentioning here, you'll find yourself in the coming days feeling very relaxed and very calm. You'll find yourself feeling with confidence. You'll find your blah, 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 blah. That's direct suggestion that they're open to hear, goes in their mind, come out of the session on the other side of it. And then like the play with that with the affirmations, then in the morning, they're going to read these things again and reinforce that over and over again. And it just, direct suggestion.
Another way that works though, is that if the client is mentioning that they are struggling with whatever is happening, struggling with visualization, you say to not do something, because the brain is apt to do it if you say not to do it. So whatever you do, do not imagine you use elephant.
Yeah. Don't think of an elephant.
Don't think of an elephant. Don't think about the big gray elephant with the giant ears.
Don't think about it at all.
Because it triggers your brain to go, oh, I want to think about that.
That reverse psychology, you sneaky hypnotist. I see you. I see you.
The other thing is try. You never want to use the word try. Try to do so and so. Try to do this, because it's almost like
it implies failure.
It implies failure. But we utilize that. Not telling a secret here. But if you're doing like the finger, magnetic fingers or something, you say try to pull those fingers apart, and your brain's going, "No, I can't," because that try becomes right.
So what we're getting at with this question is there's not so much a difference between the words hypnosis and power of suggestion, but rather there is a relationship between the power of suggestion within hypnosis, which I think is really cool. And that goes back to like your trigger words or your actions manifesting that power of suggestion from the hypnosis. That's amazing. Next question. I really wish Bonnie had put these in kind of an order to carry a conversation. They're kind of all over the place. But
a grocery store list.
The next question is coming from aisle 3 in the produce section. What things do you have to learn to become a hypnotist?
Lots. Patience. You have to learn how to be connected with someone on such a level that they can allow themselves to relax with you. You have to learn how to read people physically, make choices
not
in
to
the
be
moment.
Not to be confused with having a library card and reading that bitch.
No. You need to be able to, I need to be able to look at you, and without you saying anything, I can determine whether you're okay or not. Whether you're following along with what I'm saying or you're not there. I have to be able to control my actions based off of what I see in you.
Based on your perceptions. Absolutely.
And And you go before that. The first thing we generally talk about in class for hypnosis is, where to come from. And you go back and talk about, all the way back, many years ago,
All the way back.
all the way back
Good
to
Lord.
the sleep temples in ancient Egypt, where people went in and they did various rituals and all to sleep. And then you progress up through Mesmer and the people like
And the
that,
grumpy men that designed all these things.
and into more modern days. Name some people that worked in it
Jacqueline.
doing with doing things with medical hypnosis, where they could actually do surgeries under the influence of hypnosis. What else? What I'm trying to think of. There's other things.
Hold on.
And there's a huge, rich history of how this evolved to where it is today. Eric, yeah. Ericksonian hypnosis, which is very conversationally oriented. There are things we do where metaphor oriented. There's the direct suggestion, the metaphor, understanding different techniques, understanding different approaches, understanding dealing with clients, having that free talk that is meaningful, what you talk about during the session, the actual operation of the session. It's a lot of information. I think
and then there's little tangents too that you can learn about, like handwriting studies.
Yeah.
Learn that stuff. Oh gosh.
I do. As far as tangential things, I learned the
Tapping.
IEMT working, of the things that like tapping and all. I think originated probably in neuro-linguistic programming circles, NLP circles. NLP itself, literally, there are volumes of stuff that you can learn. Getting certified, there are instructors. I would not recommend going to a weekend class at the Howard Johnson's to learn hypnosis. It's just not enough. Erica and I both have attended Mike Mandel's classes. He's in Toronto, Canada. He's excellent. He covers a good, broad range of stuff. And I also studied under Freddie Jacqueline in the Jacqueline Hypnosis Institute Academy out of England. They're very good. Sort of different slants on similar knowledge. Who else? National Guild of Hypnotists has a number of trainers. There are some organizations that offer legitimate training through people who know what they're doing. Weekend classes just won't cut it. I was exposed to hypnosis many years ago. Had my first class back then for National Guild of Hypnotists certification, and I didn't feel like I quite had enough background for that. So I have a master's degree in counseling psychology from that. So that depth, I think, helps me in doing a lot more things with it. But it's anybody interested in it. Freddie Jacqueline
Research the schools.
researched it very well. I can recommend Freddie Jacqueline, Anthony Jacqueline wholeheartedly. They're very good. They have a very good structure in their classes. Mike Mandel, Hypnosis Academy, MMHA out of Toronto, very good.
But then you've also got
Jason Lynette is also here in the States. He's in Florida now. But I don't know that he's doing hypnosis training per se now.
You can mention Desiree. Desiree teaches.
Desiree Eckert teaches in California. She is at that other side of the spectrum with spiritual hypnosis. Desiree will tell you outright that she's a witch, and she uses witchcraft, and she's got a little ad thing running now that says hypnosis is witchcraft.
And she's absolutely beautiful, and she has green bangs.
She is a fantastic person, and even though she's saying that, I know her quite well, and she is well balanced in neuroscience. Don't let her fool you. She knows stuff.
Well, I find, that within, witchcraft and spiritual systems like that, hypnosis would be relevant in a lot of things that are done. I mean, a lot of times when you're manifesting or you're working spellcraft, there is a level of trance involved and a level of hypnosis that lets you tap into that focus that you're trying to manifest into reality. Mm-hmm. So her being a witch would probably make me more confident in a lot of ways, just because, I practice.
If you have a chance, look her up. Desiree Eckert. She's in California. She's she really is cool.
And she is so kind. She is probably one of the nicest people that I have ever met.
That's also good to know. I think, character is important when it comes to, again, people who you're working with. You wouldn't want to go to an asshole therapist. I wouldn't want to go to an asshole.
Right.
So another question that Bonnie had, we've actually addressed a few different times. She asks about the different levels and or types of hypnosis. She talks about the behavioral stuff like quitting smoking, uncovering past traumas or past lives. She wants to know if that's a real thing or a Hollywood thing. And as we've talked about, there are realisms and fantasy when it comes to those types of things. And it's bridging that gap and figuring out what is something you're making up versus something that's actually happened. Is not something that you can certify in a lot of ways. She wants to know what sort of ethics does a hypnotist have to abide by? And going along with that, would that make a hypnotist a mandated reporter?
Oh, a mandated reporter.
What does that mean?
So if there is revelation of some kind of
Assault, yeah.
something like that. No, we are not mandated reporters. At least in Alabama, our practice is not mandated reporters. Ethics, we have to follow laws.
I think each school has their own set of ethics that they push. National Guild has a set of ethics that you have to agree to be part of the guild. I think each school has their set of ethics. It's generally pretty much the same sort of thing. I am thinking towards.
I know that we cannot prescribe. We cannot
I can't do
make
that,
people believe that we are medical.
But there is a duty to inform.
Yeah, I think if it came down to it, a matter of it being a mandated reporter, like if I felt like there was something that was needing to be reported, I don't think I would hesitate.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I don't know if that's something that would be a legislated sort of requirement or something you would do out of just being human.
Right.
So like true crime a whole lot though.
Right. So like when it comes to school counselors and whatnot, and there's evidence of child abuse, they can be held legally liable if they don't report it because they are mandated by the law to report those things. Well, that's good. That's good to know. I mean, ethics is kind of a really broad topic anyway, and if there's not one central governing body on all hypnotists, so it would then make sense that each school of thought within hypnotism or each school teaching hypnotism would have like their own little ethics.
Just back to something that Erica stated early on, make sure that your chosen hypnotist, especially in Alabama, has some sort of noted certification that they've gone through a legitimate training and they're not just somebody just doing it on the whim and they've read a book and they're going to try to practice on people.
Right.
It's just simple.
And make sure that now I'm going to say this and it's going to open up a can of worms. Make sure that whatever profession is happening that you are looking for someone in, that they have a reason to have hypnosis. There have been stories, at least one specifically that's coming to mind. I think you said he was a lawyer. And he did horrible things to his client.
Oh, yeah. Well, you read about that regularly, and I don't know, some things you read. Yeah.
But if the person doesn't have a reason to be practicing hypnosis on you, don't let them practice hypnosis on you.
There was a recently that made the news.
Yeah.
A lot of the rest of these questions we've talked about pretty extensively, talking about self-hypnosis. I'm having Erica's situation. It's deciduous trees. It's talking about self-hypnosis, the snapping of the hypnotist's fingers to bring one out. That's a good question. The process of bringing someone out of a trance or of a hypnosis session, it can't be just as simple as, when I snap my fingers, you are awake. Or is it that simple? I mean, is that the reality of the situation?
It can be. It's rather blunt, but yeah, it can be. Yeah, it's very simply what I will generally do is I wind down my session. I'll say, in a moment, I'm going to count from 1 to 5. And I'll let that sink in for a moment. And I'll say 5. You're feeling your arms on the chair. 4. Take a deep breath in. And I'm watching this as I'm doing it. Take a deep breath in. And typically, they'll take a deep breath in. Letting the oxygen spread through your body, feeling that energy giving oxygen spreading all through your body now. You're feeling very revitalized, feeling very refreshed. 3, another deep breath in. 2, 1, eyes open, wide awake. No, okay. How do you feel? Oh, I'm very relaxed.
Okay, so some of these get into rather long conversations. So I'm not going to ask all of them. What we can do is have a part 2, because some of these are like, what's the history of hypnosis? We're talking thousands of years of history. Right. That's
now,
like,
I think I recently, in my mind trying to hear it, I recently downloaded something that was a beautiful printed history of hypnosis. I'll look for that.
We can link it.
Provide that for a link for you. But
Okay.
it's a rich history. You know, you're talking Mesmer. You have Sigmund Freud did hypnosis for a while. You had the people associated around Sigmund Freud. You know, and things going into the modern day. Dr. John Watkins is one of the people that one of my current mentors believes a lot in. He's written books. He came to using hypnosis a lot in PTSD situations in wartime. You know, extremely changed a lot of lives. So yeah, there's a rich history of hypnosis throughout the years.
Right. Another question she posed was vulnerability with hypnosis. Does going under hypnosis make someone vulnerable? And she references things like possession or spiritual attack. Would hypnosis cause someone to be vulnerable to such events?
We sort of addressed that with the idea of the self-hypnosis and other things. I think with there again too, in a hypnosis session like in the office, we're going to go through a session. We're going to go through all the things we need to take care of within the session. Then you're going to have the end of the session. You're going to bring you out of hypnosis and all that. Now, if you're doing self-hypnosis where there's sort of open-ended, I think it's sort of a requirement that you go in with that idea of this has a certain purpose and you're not just opening up wide open to things. And again, I'll reflect back to the days of working in the ghost stuff and doing the things we did, but we would always open with I don't mean to trigger any religious things here, but we would open with a prayer that we're opening and protecting ourselves with white light. And then at the end of that session, particularly when we're tabling or doing things along that nature, we would close that table and say, we are over, this table is closed. Thank all the spirits that came through. But at this time, doors closed, so to speak, and that's it. You're surrounding yourself with the white light.
And just to clarify, when he says prayer, he doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a religious type prayer, but as long as you have a positive form of belief, or even just, it doesn't have to be religious. It can just be that you are setting a boundary out loud to your situation, to the event occurring.
Right.
I will not allow negativity to come in. I will not entertain negative thoughts. It's not welcome, you know.
Yeah. And as far as the individual goes, as far as the hypnotist goes, they are going to try their best to build that rapport. You know, when you talk to me in a session, it's me, okay? I'm about as wide open as you can be about who I am. I'm a little crazy. I talk too much, but this is me. I'm not going to do anything to harm the people coming to see me. Right. Feel that comfort level with whoever you're working with. And if you've got doubts, say, hey, you know, I don't think I can do this now. And they should say, I understand, that's fine.
Now, in my practice specifically, I know that I will encourage the knowledge that they are safe at every chance I get. This is a safe situation. Nothing can harm you. Nothing can hurt you. You're safe. And I give options too. If they suddenly want to end the session in their trance or whatever, I give them a way that they can go back to their campsite, or that they can choose to just bypass that and come back to the office, you know, mentally, physically be present. So at least that's what I do. I encourage that they are safe and that they have ways to leave whatever is happening.
Yeah, typically it's always you have some you know, basically you're saying during the trance that realize you were safe. What if in this moment, you know, you find that everything is for your good? You are in a safe place here. You should be relaxed. You should be, you know, sort of just to triply impressing that upon them, that they are in a safe place. We're working towards helping them solve some kind of situation that they're in. And
I think with self hypnosis though, to maybe design your own scenario before you just jump in.
So that you've got a beginning and a closure.
Right.
That you and design it yourself that way that you know what to say to yourself beforehand. It's not just on the whim.
Yeah,
Like
it should absolutely be something ritualistic. It should be something that you do with intent. And when you do anything with intent, you have a beginning and an end, so that intent, does what it needs to do, and then the energy is sent where it's supposed to.
Right.
And ritual is sort of can be a word that sort of can be, triggering is too strong, but it's got a meaning to it. But I agree with you. I love the ritual of hypnosis session. Mm-hmm. If I had somebody walk in and I did a instant induction on them, took their shoulder and said, "You sleep," and you went down, I would feel like I just did something very wrong.
Right.
I don't like that.
I would probably look at the person like they were stupid, because I wouldn't be under. I'd be like, well,
it works.
Okay.
It does work with some folks.
And that's a perfect segue into this next question, because what you're talking about, Mr. Ballard, is someone that's really easily put under, right? So Mama B asked, is it bad if someone can be hypnotized easily? Does that have a correlation with a weak mind or being more susceptible to ill intent?
Weak mind, no. I think we have different levels of being able to be susceptible to suggestion. And what
sounds like a really exciting client to have.
I would find it real. So I had a session just a few days ago. I don't know where I was going with that, but I was so thrilled. And afterwards, when we were talking and all that, and he was in it. He was in it. He said, "Oh my God, what you were talking about," which I won't go into that, but what you were talking, I saw it. It was fantastic. And I'll be honest with you. When I go through a session, I'm working with somebody in certain visualization and all that, and I sometimes we get tears. And to me, unless it's something negative, it's usually a good sign that they are getting something happening within that trance. I had one lady
digestion.
I had one lady that came. I noticed a tear running down her face during a very sedate part of the trance, where I'm talking about a field of flowers and a nice bench in a wooden situation, like a park situation. And I'm trying to build that imagery with her, and she's got a tear rolling down her face. And I'm thinking, okay. So we went through the session. I got through and I said, "Listen, if you don't mind, what were you thinking at that point?" And she says, "I talked to my grandmother. I got to tell my grandmother goodbye."
Don't cry.
It's been upsetting, but how sweet, how fantastic,
Absolutely. The next question, there's two more that we're going to talk about. The next question is self-care. And from the hypnotist standpoint, what do hypnotists do for their own self-care, especially during really heavy sessions, such as the one that you're talking about, now that's brought you emotions even after the fact? Is there a system that hypnotists do for self-care that may be a little different than just the run-of-the-mill therapy, right?
Yeah. I'm an old softy now, and I cry about things. I can watch the Christmas Carol and cry. But yeah, I think that we all do things. We all, are aware of working with people's emotions and being aware of those emotions. And I know, talking to some of my colleagues that have a steady diet of very traumatic things, that it's a factor, and you have to take care of yourself when you're doing that kind of work. Set aside time for your own mindfulness and your own relaxation, and whatever you need to do to be back in that good place, because it just, matter of fact, it can pile up if you build upon you. You just have to be very aware that that's a possibility.
I think a large portion too is developing the ability to not necessarily disconnect, but unbuckle.
Okay.
So
I like that analogy. Not disconnecting, but just unbuckling.
Right. This is not my experience with life. So I'm going to, when we're together, we can work on it together. But when we are apart, I know and accept that my life journey is different than what I have just gone through with someone else. and to remove prolonged emotional connection. And I know that sounds harsh.
I don't know. I mean, that's what therapists do. I mean, in a lot of ways, they realize that, they're working with people that have a reason to be in therapy, right? Regardless of the severity of their need of therapy, they're in therapy for a reason. And it does take that kind of conscious thought to be able to separate yourself from the interaction and the actual trauma, right? You can't absorb that kind of emotions from the people you're working with, which is why I would be a terrible therapist, because I automatically am like a leech. I'm like, baby, no, so so that is that something that you go into it with that focus, or is it something that you have to collect yourself after? So you enter the situation knowing that there's a barrier between your own life and the interaction you're about to have, or is that self-care for after?
It depends on the session. He will sometimes in his sessions bring up personal experience to help the other person to latch on to a relation that they can go into trance with. So like he'll bring up vacations, photos from vacations, and he'll talk about beach vacations and bring up personal stuff to help that other person to connect and go, oh, yes, I also have had vacations with photo albums, and I'm now recalling those photo albums. But so it's a little bit of giving in the sessions. So I guess the more care would occur after. Sometimes it's easy to go in if you've got it laid out in your mind what the session's going to look like, how it's going to flow. But if you have to give pieces of your life information into it kind of negates the beginning disconnect.
Right.
But you also don't want to go to a cold, a hypnotist that's cold to you.
Right.
You want to have that rapport with someone. So I'm going to say after.
Okay. Valid.
I share a good bit. I don't spill my guts out in a session, but I share a good bit about things and feelings and all, and I talk about my experience with like the INT exercise and working through some stressful things, and I'll share some of that stuff with people. But afterwards, I think it's just good to be able to be at a point when you finish that session that you tried to wrap things up and resolve. And we don't like to do a postmortem per se at the end of the session, because there's a lot of metaphor and a lot of things you leave in place.
Explain what postmortem means. So that
it's a medical term, but I didn't mean it in that sense. I don't do a deep analysis for that person while they're sitting there and I say, well, this is what I was talking about when I said XYZ. All right, and this is what I meant. No, you don't do that. You're laying a lot of things in there, and as I say in the thing, I'm going to say a lot of things. Some things you may not even hear me say. You may not be listening to the sound of my voice. Some things you may hear, and they're just not important to remember. You may totally forget about them. Some things you may hear as I'm speaking to you, and you hear right on through the session. Some things I'll say that you may not remember, but you may recall later on. That in itself is suggestion that they're going to continue to percolate on some of these things mentally that may not be something they can remember right after the session, but later on it may come back to them. So at the end of that session, I'll talk a little bit. How do you feel? How do you feel? Making sure they have returned to the room well, that they're okay to get up and walk out and get in their car and get in traffic here and get, not get ran over. Make sure they're back in their awareness.
But housekeeping, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and then they go forward. And then at the next session, I'll always say, well, how did you do after that session? Did you have any revelations? Anything come to mind? Any thoughts? And it tickles me people. When I talk to a person, they say, yeah, well, diet wise or something, or weight wise, they were eating more healthier. They were doing exercise. Yes. Yeah. But you do love to get that feedback that they have gotten something out of the session. And just the fact that they're coming back is sort of refreshing to see they're coming back for more. So you're sort of on the right track. So yeah, you want to see them happy, they're doing well, and definitely not having negative effects from what they end the session.
Word. The last question we have from Ms. Bonnie, it talks about privacy rules. Are there any standardized privacy rules that hypnotists have to abide by? Confidentiality agreements, not patient, but client hypnotist privileges, that type of thing?
Yeah, I would name it.
Legally, no. But
Ethically,
yes.
Okay.
And I wouldn't talk about a client by name by any way, shape, or form. And this, my client list is not something that I would publicly share. Or, I guess I can be forced legally to if there were a case where it's like a responsibility to domain or a subpoena or something like that. But I don't know, do doctors have that kind of privilege? I don't know if doctors have that kind of privilege.
I don't think they do. I think if it gets demanded by a court, you have to.
You have to sort of do it. But no, there's not. My information is within my use only.
Okay.
We don't even talk about clients per name.
That's a good thing. I think privacy is important. Do either one of you have anything else you would like to add on the topic of hypnosis that we may not have talked about?
I think we've covered a lot of things. I just would like people to consider hypnosis. As I said, there are a lot of things we do directly with hypnosis that people think about going to see a hypnotist for. There are a number of things we can do that are just outside that little bundle of things that you normally connect
It's not
with
just
hypnosis.
weight loss. It's
not just weight loss. It's not just smoking. It's not just I'm afraid of spiders and that sort of thing. There's a lot of other things too. And I'll talk a bit just to go to a little bit to the further extreme. My IEMT practice involves a number of things around personality, about identity. There are a number of things we can do with that the idea of how depression can be a cyclic thing that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I talked with a gentleman about that recently, and it sort of gave him a better understanding of how things can go from, say there's an incident at work and you get all mad and all that, and to understand that cycle of how that incident at work can be something you think about later, and then the next day, and sort of that broadens that thing where it becomes a cycle that just gets worse and worse. So do that kind of thing. Identity-wise, I would say something like, Rob, and tell me who you are. You say, well, I'm a podcaster, I'm a cook, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a that. And what I'm looking for there, if you were to say is something, well, I'm a very nervous person and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, tell me about that. Why are you a nervous person? You work on those elements of your personality that you have encompassed into you as part of your being. And sometimes those things aren't really in alignment with where you need to be. And we can work with that with the eye movement thing, sort of to make that realign to where you need to be be the kind of person you need to be. So there's a lot of things we can talk about in hypnosis.
It could also be just for fun.
Yep.
I love that. Love that. Well, anyway, I don't know much about anything that we haven't covered. As far as I really enjoyed the fact that hypnosis does play a really large part in things like psychology and treatment. You can use, the tools from, within the realm of therapy to help initiate change within somebody. I think is really cool. And you can work in conjunction with a therapist, and some therapists are hypnotists themselves. I think that's really, really almost crucial in a lot of treatment plans for that, because some of it is just a subconscious thing, and you can't just consciously work on subconscious things. You have to tackle them subconsciously. I think that's important to keep in mind. Hypnosis is something that I've never really looked into until meeting Erica. So, that's something that I've added to my list of topics to read and research and whatnot. So that's cool. I don't have any aspirations of ever once in my life being a hypnotist, but broadening my knowledge is important to me. So we're working on that. And Erica, do you have anything you'd like to add about hypnotism?
Well, we
Check us out.
We are on the internet as hooverhypnosis.com. There are links to what Erica does, as well as links to what I do, and just a lot of general information. We do sessions online. So we're here in Hoover, Alabama, just right outside of Birmingham. So anybody in the area that should have a seat.
Plug it.
Come on, give us a call.
Practical
Come on down.
Practical Trance, the podcast, is also a podcast my father and I have started to talk about hypnosis too. So check that out. But Hoover Hypnosis is the name of the business, and we would love to see how we can help you.
Absolutely. I love that. Yes, and we're going to be plugging links for the website and all the other podcasts so that they can find the links to that. That's what's up. Make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe to get updates and our latest episodes.